The people who made the Genesis creation story knew these old stories well. And they used some of them in their description of the beginning of the world. Like Abraham, the Bible's story of creation was born in ancient Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia was very fertile, bountiful even, but it also held random violence in it. For the Mesopotamians, life was precarious. Crops and cities were often parched or washed away by floods and violent storms. There was plague too, and tribesmen raiding down from the surrounding hills. The Mesopotamian myth of the creation gave order to uncertainty. Enuma Elish, the ancient priests recited to their people. Enuma Elish, la nabu shamanu, when on high the heavens were not yet named. They went on to tell an ancient and terrifying story of a family feud. How one day the great mother goddess declared war on all 6 generations of her family because they were making too much noise. And then the gods appointed Marduk, a warrior of the 6th generation, as their champion. And Marduk fought the mother goddess and her husband and her demon army on the great wide plain of Mesopotamia. And finally, he overcame them all. As for the mother goddess, he pushed the wild wind into her mouth, bloated her stomach, shot arrows into her, and Mesopotamia was born. With a butcher's knife, Marduk split the carcass of the mother goddess in half and made the sky and the earth, and from the arch of her thighs he made the vault of heaven. Her head he buried under the northern mountains, and pierced her eyes so that Mesopotamia's 2 great rivers would flow down her cheeks. It's extraordinary to think of that terrible Mesopotamian mayhem, that terrifying story of creation, is the same story that underlies that solitary, majestic creation of Jehovah in the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It's the same story as that Mesopotamian murder. And that's important in a way. It's important not because you say, oh, well, fancy that, you know, the book of Genesis is a rip-off of some Mesopotamian folk story. That's not the thing. It's important because what, through the Bible, that old Mesopotamian story has given the West. It's given the West a very particular model of the universe, of a certain sort of structure, of a single unit with stresses and strains in it, just like a family. Now, how these things work, how is it that the Mesopotamian story is buried in this first page of the book of Genesis? Well, you're not going to find some Mesopotamian god called Joe, who ends up being Jehovah, who goes off and does a similar thing in Mesopotamia. The concordance between the 2 stories is one of structure and number. Remember, there are 6 generations of Mesopotamian gods, just as Jehovah takes 6 days to make the universe. And in each day, Jehovah makes a part of the universe. He makes the sun, the stars, the silt, the animals, the plants, the birds. The Mesopotamian gods of each of those 6 generations are the gods of exactly the same things that Jehovah is making on each of his 6 days of creation. So underneath this text, if you like, there live the Mesopotamian gods. Look, just start on the first day. God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. The waters below ground and above ground, salt water and fresh water. The waters, incidentally, are the 2 rivers of Mesopotamia going into the Persian Gulf. Mesopotamia going on here, but that is the gods of the first generation, the great mother goddess, was the god of the salt water. Her husband was the god of the fresh water. They're the first generation gods. That's what he's making on the first day. And you can go like that, second generation, second day, third generation, third day, fourth generation. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He's making the sun and the moon. What are the gods of the fourth generation of Mesopotamian gods? They're the gods of the heavens, of the sun, the moon, and the stars. And he made the stars also, the book of Genesis tells us, on the fourth day. And that correspondence goes right down through the list until you come to the sixth day. Now, what happens on the sixth day? Marduk, of the sixth generation of gods, makes man so that the other gods can rest. The other gods are building Marduk a temple. It's become so splendiferous, they're going to build the guy a temple. So Marduk takes pity on them and all and says, right, I'll make you a man a slave so that you can all rest. What does Jehovah do? He makes man on the sixth day, and then Jehovah takes the rest. The difference is with the sort of man that's being made. Marduk makes man to be a slave. Jehovah, though, makes man in his own image. Man is given responsibility. It's as if the people who wrote Genesis are saying, yes, we understand your world, Mesopotamia. We absolutely believe in the way you priests have divided up the whole order of the universe. You're good scientists, but you're lousy moralists. We want a different role for men. That means, too, they wanted a different role for God. So the God of Genesis isn't a Mesopotamian God. Where did he come from? Well, think of Abraham again. He's going on his intellectual journey. He's starting in Mesopotamia, and he's going to Egypt. And the Jehovah of Genesis is not so much like the gods of Mesopotamia, but far more like the gods of Egypt.